that the AC is just not.
Gina said she predicts a long one. No, she.
What's your over and under?
No, I'm going to start at 6:30 on the dot. Just call it to order. And we're going to go.
Yeah?
Vegas has the over under 8:45.
Midnight.
Oof! You're going over then.
Midnight.
I would go heavy. I'd go heavy on that.
And midnight because you guys can't go any further than midnight.
So you go under. You go midnight under.
Yeah. Midnight.
Madam Clerk, I know it's 6:30. I wanted to go ahead and call the meeting to order, but I know we're expecting at least one more person. If we can just get a confirmation.
Yeah, Councilmember Ruano is on her way.
And are participants online, already online?
No, I don't see the mayor online. Not yet.
Is the mayor the only participant online?
Yeah.
Okay. Madam Clerk, can you contact Ms. Nguanzo and see if she is... I'm sorry, yeah, I said Ms. Nguanzo, yeah, Freudian slip.
You have a quorum.
If she's close by, I'll hold off. If not, we'll...
Sort of pledge allegiance. Get the pleasantries out.
Well, we can start with the call to order, and we'll get that stuff moving, and then we'll see where she's at. So with that, the time is 6:32. I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. Madam Clerk, if you can call roll.
Councilmember Collazo.
Present.
Councilmember Diegues.
Here.
Councilmember Fernandez.
Present.
Councilmember Garcia.
Present.
Councilmember Ruano, Vice Mayor Alvarez, and Mayor Sid are absent, but we have quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Please rise for a prayer led by Councilman Josh Diegues.
Thank you, everyone. Dear Heavenly Father, we ask for your guidance as we prepare to set the budget for the upcoming fiscal year. Obviously, there's been some tough choices that we've had to be made, but we are asking for your guidance as we go ahead and make our final decisions tonight. That's the best way to provide the services to our residents that they have come to expect from us. And so we ask for your guidance and also your help as we debate this to ensure that we arrive at the correct decision. Thank you. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Please remain standing, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance, led by Councilman Fernandez. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may all be seated. On to the order of business. I have one item that I do want to defer to our regular council meeting, which is the manager's report, which is the report on license plate readers. I know that this was something we requested. The manager has already provided us all feedback. It's not going to have any implication on the budget, but in an effort to just be expeditious and be transparent at the same time, I just move to defer that to the next council meeting.
I'll second that.
Motion, there's a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any other additions, deletions, or deferrals? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to adopt the agenda as...
So moved.
Motion, second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. On to public comments. I know we have at least one public here, and I don't know if anybody else is represented online, Madam Clerk, but we'll start with the people that are here. Thank you. Welcome to the podium, Ms. Mendez. The podium that's actually named in...
anybody watching over there, there's only one person in this dais. I mean, not the dais, the council chambers, sorry. I'm here not to talk about the budget, but to talk about attendance to the council meetings. Section 2.5 of your charter states clearly, a council member shall be subject to forfeiture of his office in the discretion of the remaining council members if he is absent without good cause from any 3 regular council meetings during a calendar year, or if he is absent without good cause from any 3 consecutive regular council meetings. It's up to you. Up to you. It's not up to us. It's not up to the town clerk or the town manager. It's up to you. One of you has to say, your job is to be here. And the vice mayor has missed the September council meeting, the first budget hearing, and be missing the second budget hearing. This is unconscionable. You were elected to be here, not to be home in your underwear. Please, do something about it.
Thank you. Let the record reflect that Councilwoman Morano is in attendance, and I also see Mayor Sid online as well. There's no more public comments here in person. Madam Clerk, if you can check if there's any public comments online.
No, I'm looking at my screen, and I don't have any participants. I have Mayor Sid, so welcome to the meeting, and welcome Councilwoman Ruano, but no one for public comments.
Thank you. And just to update the mayor and the councilwoman, there was one item on the agenda that we went ahead and deferred to the regular council meeting, which is the manager's report. It has no bearing on the budget. It was already an item that he has provided us to update, so we're just trying to be expeditious, and we move that to the regular council meeting.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. On to the consent calendar.
I'll move the consent calendar.
Motion, there is a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Consent calendar passes. Thank you. On to ordinances, second reading. This is a public meeting. I think there's something that needs to be read into the record.
No, Mr. Chair, the statement has to be read in for the budget. For the millage? See, that's why I'm happy to have Melissa here.
I believe we should first call read the ordinance.
Read the ordinance,
yes. Thank you. This is the ordinance adopting the millage rate for the fiscal year 2023 and 2024. An ordinance of the Town of Miami Lakes, Florida, adopting the millage rate of the Town of Miami Lakes for fiscal year commencing October 1st, 2023 through September 30th, 2024, pursuant to Section 200.065 Florida statutes, providing for directions to the tax collector, providing for notice, providing for conflicts, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date.
Thank you. This is an ordinance in second reading. This is a public meeting. Anyone here wishing to speak on this ordinance?
Mr. Chair, I think now would be the appropriate time for me to read this.
Go ahead and read the statement into the record.
The proposed millage rate for the Town of Miami Lakes fiscal year 2023-24 is 2.0732. This rate is the rollback rate. The rollback rate is defined by Truth in Millage Trim as the rate that generates the same tax revenue as the current year, less new construction, additions, deletions, and rehabilitative improvements. The gross taxable value for operating purposes is $4,515,345,099. The proposed millage rate will generate $8,893,153 in ad valorem revenue, budgeted at 95% collection rate.
Thank you. Do you want me to read the public meeting comments again, or anybody here wishing to speak? None? Public comments are closed.
I'll move the item.
There's a motion.
Second.
There's a second. Any discussion?
Yes, I'd like to,
Go ahead.
through the chair. First of all, I want to thank the staff for all your hard work over the last couple of months. Melissa, thank you so much for everything you've done, and everybody else, and Mr. Manager, and my colleagues for really putting a very valiant effort to be able to go through everything line by line and try to make the best decisions for the residents. As you know, as a body, we decided to go to the rollback rate, and knowing there's some things that we also need to take care of. I just asked my colleagues to keep in mind a couple things that we've all, as a body, said were priorities, whether the police, police department, our public safety, our sidewalks and tree budget that is, I believe, woefully under budgeted, and also our blasting advisory board has been really working hard for years, making a dent in moving the needle, and they still do not have a budget. I asked my colleagues to think about that when we come to actually voting on the actual budget, and not just the millage rate, to keep that in mind tonight. Perhaps maybe we can, and I realize that a lot of it's going to come from the Optimist, or all of it's going to come from Optimist, but just keep those three things in mind that we've all decided were priorities when we make that final decision tonight. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, if I may, just make a point. And Councilman Garcia, I think that's a wonderful point, but I would, since this is on the millage and we have to only concentrate on the millage, no, what I would say is those same comments, please reiterate them again at the time when we read the budget.
Thank you. Any additional comments just on the millage alone?
Yes.
Mr. Mayor.
Mayor.
Yes, go ahead.
To the attorney, just to be clear, because I was a little confused there for a second. This is simply the millage, the rollback rate millage, correct?
That is correct, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Any additional comments just on the millage? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, please call the question. Call the roll.
Item 7A, motion to approve the ordinance in second reading. Councilmember Fernandez.
Yes.
Councilmember Dieguez.
Yes.
Councilmember Garcia.
Yes.
Councilmember Collazo.
Yes.
Councilmember Ruano.
Yes.
Mayor Sid.
Yes.
The ordinance in second reading passes.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. On to item 7B, ordinance approving and adopting the budget for 2023-2024.
An ordinance of the Town of Miami Lakes, Florida, approving and adopting the budget for the Town of Miami Lakes for fiscal year 2023-2024, providing for expenditure of funds, providing for amendments, providing for carryover of funds, providing for incorporation of the capital budget as a capital improvement element of the comprehensive plan, providing for conflicts, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date.
Mr. Manager, is there something that you need to read into the record for the budget?
Not for this item, sir.
Okay, this is an ordinance in second reading. Anybody from the? Yes, ordinance in second reading. It is a public hearing. Any comments from the public for the ordinance in second reading?
Martha Mendez, 7,000 Glen Eagle Drive. I'm your conscience. I stand on this side and remind you what you have to do. This time, I'm here to thank you for rolling back the rate. I understand it has been difficult to bring it back down to where it should be, but we were through very difficult times, and it was the right thing to do. The other issue I have to discuss with you is that the people told you in the bond voting, 60-40, that we didn't want what you were proposing for the Optimist. You don't seem to understand that. You seem to be putting money in there constantly. We would rather you put the money on our streets, tree trimming, sidewalk repair, road repair. That's what we wanted. But you seem to forget the vote. The vote was 60% of the population that voted said no to you. You don't get it. or maybe you get it and then you're still in La La Land. So it's time for you to remember that the money that is in the Optimist belongs to us in the streets where we want it spent. And yes, security is very important, and all of these little issues you have, you can take it out of there because it doesn't belong in there. It's a nice piggy bank. Every time you have 2 cents to rub together, you put it in there. Well, it's our money, and we want our money where it makes a difference. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Mendez. Any additional public comments online, Madam Clerk?
No, Councilmember Collazo. No participants.
Okay, hearing no more public comments is now closed. On to item 7B. Is there a motion to adopt the item?
I'll move it.
There's a motion.
I'll second it.
There's a second. Discussion. I'll start from my right to my left and do the same thing we did last time, going online, and we'll do a couple turns if we have to.
Thank you. To repeat myself, a couple things that I think we need to think about, and maybe let's talk about blasting. Blasting has always been a priority for us. It's something that we need to continue to fight. So I would like to put a motion to add at least $5,000 to create a budget for the Blasting Advisory Board. They're going to have to go to Tallahassee in earlier this year. I know that Representative Fabrizio is counting on them to go. He mentioned here and made public comment that they're very, very effective. And you know, I just think a budget for them would be something that they need just for the basics. You know, whatever printing or paperwork they have to do to get ready for the trip. And then if they need more, like we did before, we were able to give them some travel budget. But I think that giving them a budget shows how much we support them and how important they are to the community, and shows that they are making a difference in the blasting. So I would ask my colleagues to consider adding $5,000 to the budget for the committee. But perhaps we can take a 0.5% from other committees, all the way down, or a percentage, all the way down from the other committees, to make it fair, or just add you know, see if we can move $5,000 to budget for them. As far as the police department, I understand that the major feels that we're good. However, I think overtime is very important for them. It gives them that flexibility, and I think we should think about how we're going to budget overtime, not wait for the carry forward, but make sure that we're at least giving them $40,000, $50,000 in overtime money, so he has it there, he can work with it starting October 1st, and he can move the details where they're necessary, especially traffic, since school started in September. I've received some complaints about we moved the end of the school zone on 67th, but there's still a lot of speeding there. I've been getting calls from residents. And then sidewalks and trees. Trees are going to keep growing, and sidewalk is going to keep crumbling. Guys, we need to double the sidewalk budget. And I know it's hard right now, but I propose a motion to double that sidewalk budget to be able to get to the list of sidewalks that we still have to get to. So those are the three things in my motion. I ask my colleagues to consider.
I apologize.
There's a
Can you
motion
make them
on-
one at a time, the amendments? Just
Sure.
to follow them all?
To give the BAB a minimum of $5,000, create a budget for them. Right now, the only money they receive is when they're going to go travel, but from now to then, they have to do a lot of planning to go on that trip, and it requires them to have a budget to take care of that.
I'll second that for discussion.
Okay.
So let's take each item one by one, rather than doing all three.
Sure.
So the first one is the blasting advisory budget, $5,000. That it received a second by Councilwoman Morano. So discussion on that particular item. And again, I'm going to just shoot from the hip here because we're going in this direction. You said to take a equal allotment from all of the different committees to fund that $5,000 budget?
That's just a option I'm giving, or we can just take 5,000 from, I guess we would have to take it from the Optimist Fund, but we're going to dig deeper into the Optimus Fund.
Well, no, I think we're trying to do a
We're
balanced
trying to-
budget.
yeah,
So
we're trying to balance it, yeah.
If you're proposing a $5,000, I'm in support of the item.
Mhm.
I just want to know, making sure that we keep Melissa's head straight here. So we have $5,000 coming from, and you have to propose where it's going to come from. So if you're proposing from the Optimist Club,
Well, first I'll propose from perhaps an equal percentage from all the current committee's budget.
so it'd be $500. How many committees? I think 9, 10?
We have, I think, about 12, but 10 of them
Well,
have
minus
budgets.
12 minus 1 is 11, so about 450.
Well, it's not going to be a number.
10 of them have budgets. 2 of them do not have
Oh.
actual budgets, which blasting is one of them that does not have a budget.
So
And-
10.
Yeah.
We would have to reduce the ones that we have funded equally by $500 each.
Yes.
Well, I think it'd be, wouldn't that, because some of them are smaller than others, wouldn't it be more fair to do it by percentage? A percentage of each that equals 5,000 all in total? Because if we take 500 from a smaller budget, it's going to be unfair to that committee. Wouldn't a percentage, like maybe a 0.5 or 1% from everybody equally to reach that 5,000?
Are you saying weighted based on their current proposed budget?
Yeah, a percentage. So-
Proportional,
So
yeah.
that proportional, everybody will lose 1% or whatever we decide the percentage is to make the 5,000. If we take 500 equally from everybody, it's going to affect people differently. If they have a big budget, it's not going to affect them too much, but if they have a smaller budget, it will.
I have a question. Is the intent to make them whole in the future or just to take it?
Well, my intent right now, I would love to make them whole, but, to have the Blasting Advisory Board not have a budget at all, when they've been asking for a budget for years, and we've seen how effective they are without a budget, I think that,
Right. No.
if we can make them whole and maybe in the future with a carryover, absolutely.
I'm in
Yes.
support of that. So
Yeah.
kind of what I was going to suggest, which may make it simpler to crunch the numbers, is moving it from something that we know is going to happen much later in the fiscal year, like the 4th of July event that we know is in July, and then replenishing that once we have carry forward.
If that's a,
And then that way it's coming out of one spot.
If I may, in prior year, what was done is that it was charged to the administrative travel and per diem, and then come carry forward, we have replenished the travel and per diem for administration. So I don't know, that's what was
I
done.
would be supportive of that.
that'd be
I think
fine
that's
with
better.
me if my colleagues are okay with that.
Thank you for saving us hours of debate, Melissa. Yes.
I think that if our intention is to fund the committee and to fund it moving forward, it would be cleaner to allocate money from the Optimist Park. That way, there's no borrowing or anything like that. If that's the intention, then let's just figure out what number they need to travel. They're going to be traveling every year, and just allocate it from the Optimist Club and just make it a clean allocation. I don't know if $5,000 is enough. I believe that last year they spent more than that.
I think they spent somewhere between 6 and 7.
And how many people went up? Was it only the committee members that were
Only
paid for?
committee members, I'm not sure if all of the committee members went, but you may want to consider doing it at 7,500 just to, if all committee members want to go, you have enough money for it. And then, like Councilmember Ruano suggested, taking it from MLOP, what you can do and carry forward, instead of replenishing some other budget line, then you can just put it into back into MLOP at the carry forward.
That would make a question through the chair to the manager. So they would receive, October 1st, they would have that 7,500 if we decide. So they
Correct.
can use it.
Correct, and especially in light of the fact that this year, because there's no election now in the fall, that the legislative session will be earlier, January and February, instead of March and April, so they're going to have to spend that money for travel and everything earlier than they did last year.
Then I would amend my motion to include that information and to use the carryover in the future and replenish the Optimist budget, but take $7,500 now, if that's.
So there's an amendment to the item.
I'll
That's
second.
now 7,500. There's a second. Any,
A point to the chair and to the manager, if I may. The last time we did discuss legal reserve, and I want to bring it to this body's attention, that we are moving to trial in February.
On the Pizzi matter, correct?
That's correct, Councilman.
Thank you. Back to the amendment. Yes, Melissa.
I just want to make aware that every time that you take from the MLOP, that also changes the fund balance reserve requirement, because the money that comes in to the general fund from the capital fund increases our budget. So when the budget increases, the fund balance reserve also increases.
Thank you.
So I just wanted to make you all aware of
Yeah,
that.
so the amount that we're going to take from MLOP won't be exactly be 7,500. It'll be a little more to cover that cover.
Okay.
Thank you for that level of precision, and thank you for making us aware of that, because if the line items do become bigger, then the impact is going to be bigger. And
The
it's-
total general fund budget becomes bigger, so the 2-month reserve becomes bigger, so we have to match that.
Thank you. So the item as amended is now $7,500 coming out of MLOP. I believe there was a second by Councilman Morano. Was that you who seconded?
Yes.
Okay.
Well,
further-
there was an amendment, remember, that came from, I think, Councilman Fernandez.
Okay. Yeah, the initial item was 5,000, the amendment was 7,500.
From
and
MLOP.
coming out of MLOP. Any further discussion on this item? Councilman Dieguez, I don't think you've opined, and neither has the mayor, so go
I
ahead.
just have a question through the chair to our budget director. With this number, what would our fund, not our fund balance, the remaining balance of the MLOP account be? Pardon me for getting tongue-tied there.
She's got to do a little bit of number crunching to figure out the extra, right? She could give you a ballpark, which is the 7,500. The extra amount is going to be something she's going to have to...
Specifically, I want to know, like, what would be left in the MLOP account?
Right, but 7,500 is coming from MLOP as well as what is a little bit extra that's needed.
To cover the fund balance or reserve requirement.
Correct.
Got it.
So
okay.
that is going to be something
Okay, so
she's
what
gonna-
would that number be, to be more specific then? Not just the 7,500, but including the reserve requirement?
If I may, while we're on the subject of committees, I noticed that the Elderly Affairs Committee budget was reduced by just a smidgen. Do we know why that occurred?
As you had mentioned before, you had asked why we were charging freebie to the Elderly Affairs. So what reduced in the Elderly Affairs was $2,500, and that was specifically for the freebie. That amount is now being charged in the transit fund in PTP.
Okay, so then that means-
their budget didn't reduce. They still have the same budget. It's just those $2,500 is no longer charged in the general fund. It's charged in the transit fund.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Dieguez, while you're waiting for your information, I'm going to move to the mayor who's online.
Perfect.
No, I'm good with this amendment.
Thank you, Mayor.
Well, I don't mind voting this amendment out while she crunches the numbers, and then on the main item, we can wait at that point, but at least we can move this part out.
Okay. On the amendment and only on the amendment, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. On to the main motion as amended. Any further discussion on the main motion as amended? Councilman Dieguez, do you want the item to wait, or do you want us to take the vote and then?
I mean, again, I'm fine with it, but I think it's going to be instructive because Councilmember Garcia indicated that he's going to also want to have a discussion about a couple other amendments. So I mean, I don't mind moving this item as well, but we're going to need that information before we start discussion on his next amendment.
Correct, and as the dollar amounts go up, it's going to be actually sound policy. We're going to want to know exact dollar amounts of what we're doing, so.
Yeah, but at least
I
on
agree
this
with
item,
you.
I think we're all in agreement
Okay.
to move it forward.
So on the main motion as amended, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Councilman Garcia, go ahead.
Thank you. I'd just like to, if we don't mind, bring up the Major, ask him a question about overtime. If Major, are you able to, do you mind coming up a second, answering some questions? Thank you again, sir. How are you? A quick question, as far as overtime, when it comes to the details that you have right now, how is your budget? Or do you require extra overtime dollars starting October 1st, or is it something that could wait for maybe carryover dollars?
Right now, our regular budget that we had last year, it hasn't been affected, and it actually got increased to assist with the minimum staffing.
Okay.
So we could sustain what we need to do daily operations, minimum staffing, any scheduled town events, the schools, overtime. So we're good for now with the minimum that we have.
So when do you foresee having to ask for additional dollars for any other additional, for traffic and things like that?
Whenever it's there to be awarded, I would accept it. We're still going to continue with the daily operations of minimum staffing, doing our proactive events. We won't just be able to do as much as we did with more monies. We could do a lot more with, unlimited funds. We could do a lot of things.
No.
Right. But I'm saying but what we've always had through the years, we still have now. So we didn't get cut. It's per se
Sure.
against the last year's amended overtime. We had extras that was given, and that was a great benefit because we were able to do more. But it didn't affect what our normal operations are.
Question, is there any details you foresee coming up in the next, this month, next month, that might require additional dollars that we can act upon perhaps today?
Right now, I think we're good because everything that we have coming up through the new year, the carryover, is within the norm of what we've had for the last 5 years that I've been here.
Okay.
Councilmember, they're funded for everything that they do except for the auto theft details and the traffic enforcement details. Those are what we took out of this budget with the new millage rate to be able to
balance,
to assist in that. So those two details, which were a new phenomenon last year, that's the first time we've done them in last fiscal year. Before that, they were never done. So their normal operations, including the things that they do, including minimum staffing to make sure that they have 4 officers and 1 supervisor on at all times, all of that is funded.
Understood that they're good for normal operations.
Right.
Yeah, like the carryover that we had last year afforded us additional dollars that was awarded by the council for special projects to, to combat auto theft, to do special traffic details. It was just extra details that we could add to our normal operations.
I guess the question I would have is, obviously the details were a success.
Yes.
I get your reports. I see the traffic detail.
Yes.
You first try to educate, which is wonderful. I like that. But then, if they're egregious, then you're gonna ticket them, of course.
Correct.
And I see the successes, and then I see the crime rate, like you mentioned, some of the lowest in history. So would you say the details have been a success?
Of course.
Okay. Would you say continuing these details would, in your estimation, in your professional opinion, continue to bring results?
Of course. Okay. If it was financially feasible, of course.
Okay.
Yes.
So knowing this and waiting for the final number, I would ask my colleagues to consider, budgeting some overtime dollars so they can continue with these details since they've been such a good success. And consistency is the key, and getting the word out there you can't speed in Miami Lakes is getting around. We're getting that. If we get that reputation, it means having consistency, all right? We still get complaints about 87th Avenue. We still get complaints about, people racing. But as I mentioned, traffic detail that's consistent will show people that, hey, you cannot mess around in Miami Lakes, you cannot speed. And then the criminals understand, you come to Miami Lakes, you're going to get caught if you steal something. And that reputation has to be there, so they think twice about, coming to Miami Lakes and stealing here. So I would ask my colleagues what would be a number that would give you enough overtime dollars for these details for the next 3 months, 4 months? When is the carry? We decide on any carryover dollars for next year? April? March, April? Is there a number, Mr. Manager, you've discussed that might have the detail continue, be able to be an effective detail for traffic and for auto theft till March?
Well, we have not discussed it because that was the concession that we had to make in the budget cost-cutting process when we had less revenue. So we have not considered that. That was since it was a new phenomena, we wanted to preserve our baseline services, and that's what we focused on when we...
Yeah, of course.
When we looked at the almost $1 million in less in revenue, so we had to focus on our core services as much as possible, and that's what we did even with the police budget.
And that's understood, and your staff has done a very good job in trying to do that, making sure that the budget you present is an effective budget, knowing that with the rollback rate. But the body decided on a rollback rate as a body, so the question would be, how can we be effective going forward with this rollback rate and still provide, safety and services? So
May
I would ask my colleagues just to consider
Well, I mean, I think we're just discussing prior to...
Okay, I would make a motion, I would make a motion for my colleagues to discuss providing overtime budget for details for traffic and for auto theft, to at least have a budget for the police department to be able to have some details until March to see how much carryover goes over, and if there's any...
I'll second it for discussion.
Yeah, let's see if we can flesh this out through debate. I'm going to go ahead to my left, and I'm going to go ahead, Councilwoman Morano. I know you were
Okay,
wanting to be
no, I thank you. I appreciate that, and that was one of the notes that I had on my budget as well. And I think that the flexibility that we have is with that study that we funded. And that was the point that I tried to make during the first budget hearing, that I believe that the dollars were better spent, those $50,000 are better spent policing the community than spending them on a budget for a study that will eventually give us some sort of information that is not going to benefit the community. So although I know that the Sheriff Ad Hoc Committee came and presented, and that was their suggestion to us, and I thank them for their time and for their efforts, and applaud the fact that this would be a good idea, perhaps in a year where our budget was not so tight. I don't think that it is feasible for us to choose a study over public safety and actually having boots on the ground, doing the traffic details and the vehicle burglary detail that was so successful. I know that it's $50,000. Last year we funded it to the tune of $150, but at the very least, maybe this can carry us through carryover and not stop those patrols that have been so successful in the community.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, I think because there was an allocation that this council approved during the normal budget process, and then a second allocation that was approved during the carry forward. I think it was, if I'm not mistaken, I think it was 100,000 during the budget process, and then 50,000 during the carry forward. So if you consider the annual amount that was allocated for those details to total 150,000, if you do 50,000, that would probably give us 4 months worth of details, but we could split that up and, stretch it out, do only the auto theft details and not the traffic enforcement, or however you want to do it. But
Historically, Major, when do you normally see an uptick in, especially let's say the vehicle-related burglaries? Are the holiday seasons that we're about to enter one that you normally see an uptick? Is it later in the summer, perhaps? I'm just kind of curious.
I think normally, historically, it's normally during like the summer months and like the holiday seasons, when the shopping and vehicle burglary.
Based on that information, I would be fine with allocating money with respect to the vehicle police burglary, and only that one for now. I think the traffic detail can wait a bit longer. In terms of traffic enforcement, I think we all agree that the vehicle burglary is a bigger issue. And again, like you said, we're entering the holiday season, which is where you have seen traditionally that there is an uptick. So I'm fine with allocating. How much was it again, Mr. Manager, you were?
Well, Councilmember Ruano was talking about reallocating the 50,000, if I'm not mistaken, if I heard her correctly, the 50,000 for the police study and putting that towards these overtime details instead of.
Yes, that was the suggestion that I made. If you'd like, I can make a motion to that effect. Or I can amend Councilmember Garcia's motion.
The motion was to have discussion, which
Right.
is what we're doing now. And I think through the process of discussion, it looks like we're stumbling onto what might actually be something that's actionable. So
All right, I'll go ahead and make the motion and to go ahead and fund at $50,000 the vehicle burglary detail with overtime dollars, and for the time being, not fund the study with respect to our own police department. I think that item can be deferred to the carry forward in March and April, and we can, reallocate the money at that time. So I'll go ahead and put that motion forward to get us moving.
I'll second.
Okay, so the motion is to allocate the $50,000 for the police study, allocate it to police overtime to give the major immediate access to those funds and be able to create
For
that
the vehicle burglary.
for burglaries only. And the intent of what you suggested was also to wait till the carry forward to maybe refund that police study. Okay, the item was brought forward by Councilman Dieguez, it was seconded by Councilman Morano. Any discussion on the item?
I have a discussion. So I'm looking at the numbers and I'm looking at the difference between what was originally presented and our first reading, and what was reduced was $135,000, right? So, and that's $135 for police overtime details. That's both combined. It's the vehicle burglaries and the traffic.
And
detail.
traffic, yes.
So I think, knowing that the carry forward is going to be a March, April thing, I think if we get that 135, cut it in half, we can continue both details from now until April. And when we get to the carry forward, contemplate funding both of the details through the end of the fiscal year.
I'm fine accepting that amendment. Because again, at least I've gotten a few calls on this issue. The Laker article that went out kind of gave the impression that we were somehow defunding the police.
Right.
And while I did stress that, obviously, as the major pointed out, we've actually seen an increase in the base budget because now we're covering the basic minimum staffing levels with an increase in the minimum staffing. You know, of course, the dealing with that headline is a little tricky. So I think it would be important for us to, you know, through our budget process, which is a statement of priorities, go ahead and fund those two. I think that's a great idea. I would be happy to incorporate that as an amendment to my motion.
So the amendment is to fund the item at $67,500, 50,000 of which are coming from the police study. The other 1,750, Melissa's going to tap dance trying to find
From
MLOP. Okay, so the other 1,750 coming out of MLOP. That was, who proffered the amendment?
Councilmember Fernandez.
Seconded by
I'll
Councilman, it was
I'll second it.
seconded by Councilman Dieguez. Mayor, I see you online. Any discussion?
Yeah. First off, just want to say I'm extremely ecstatic about the minimum staffing. I'm really happy it finally came to fruition, right? Sometimes you say things and things fall on deaf ears, but I'm beyond happy to hear that. I would like to give the committee an opportunity, I don't know if they're there or not, but an opportunity to chime in and see if there's other ways to do this study, because I know they worked really hard, they gave up a lot of their time, and I don't want to see their recommendations fall flat. I will vote for this, but I will say this, I do feel that these dollars are better spent in hiring permanent officers. I mean, I've said this before. The entire law enforcement community has always chimed in and said, you know, when there's these types of gaps, it's fine to use these types of overtimes for short-term issues like this, but long-term, we need more officers, and I think that's the only way forward. I had heard through discussion, I think somebody said that the major recommended against it, and the manager, I can tell you, they're both wrong on this issue. And I stand where I've always stood on continuing to hire more officers to our force.
Thank you. The item is for $67,500. Any further discussion? All is in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. Thank you. Back to Councilman Garcia.
Thank you.
Okay, guys, and third time's a charm.
This is the last one you're allowed.
Thank you so much. All right, rule of three. Okay, the last one I will bring up, which is something that recently I'm getting a lot more calls on, is our sidewalk and tree repair. You know, everybody knows that they're going to continue to grow, and they were placed in areas that weren't meant for oak trees, very small areas. So I guess I would put an amendment, a motion to discuss where we are with the budget. Maybe ask Jeremy what his plans are with the current budget that we're proposing, and perhaps increase the budget if possible, if we're able to do that today. So I would ask my colleagues for that motion to discuss.
Motion to discuss the sidewalk repair budget.
Second.
Just sidewalks?
No, sidewalk and tree repair, sidewalk and tree, sorry.
Sidewalk repairs due
trees.
to tree, or tree trimming, you want to
Oh,
include
are we
tree trimming
discussing
as
tree
well?
trimming as well, or just
Let's-
sidewalk
Let's
repairs?
discuss it all, since this is called tree trimming and sidewalk repair due to the tree roots. If perhaps I can ask the manager,
So your item got seconded, I believe, by Councilwoman Rano, or yes, or both of them? Perfect. On to discussion.
I wanted to ask, with regards to that, to this particular conversation, I saw a reduction in tree trimming for the mini parks, and I wanted to, it went down from 20,000 to 10,000 in this proposed budget. So I wanted to know if there was a particular reason for that, or?
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Jeremy Bagdon, Director of Parks and Recreation. Yes, in this year's upcoming cycle trimming, this year's fiscal plan doesn't incorporate as many pocket parks. So last year, there was more quadrants that actually had pocket parks in which the trees needed to be trimmed. So in this fiscal year, we're looking at reducing it just based off the amount of pocket parks that are actually listed for this cycle trimming year.
Okay, so it's not because we're reducing our services, it's just that
By
the areas
quadrant.
that we're going to be.
Correct. It still allows us to get into some, and also if there is an issue of out-of-cycle trimming that is needed for pocket parks, it still gives us that flexibility, but this is looking based off of our cycle trimming plans.
Okay, thank you.
quick through the chair, I have a question for Jeremy. Jeremy, are you focusing in on our pocket parks that, is your first priority when you go to a park to make sure none of our pocket park trees are infringing on the roofs of our residents next to the pocket park?
So all trimming is based off of NZ 300 standards, and that's where the trimming of a tree for healthy structural growth is based off of. Now, yes, in most cases, when we take a look at anything abutting private properties, we do have some minimums that we take a look at and make sure if we need to go a little bit more, just to make sure we're keeping it off that private property, we do so as well.
Okay. Now, another question through the chair, through the manager. So the budget for tree trimming, due to the, I had my notes here and I don't know what I did with them. Do you have it offhand what they've been? It's been reduced in actual
tree trimming for right-of-ways, not pocket parks.
Yeah, for right-of-ways. Yes.
Yeah, it went from 190 funded to 156. However, we typically also look at some of that FP&L franchise fee that we end up splitting with Public Works does go back to tree trimming. This
Okay.
previous year, I believe it was $79,000 that we transferred over as well. So that's another way that we look at funding the entire year's trimming.
Okay. So it's down about $40,000, almost 40. And as far as the sidewalk repair, due to our, that's, yeah, I would ask through the manager, the budget there, what has it dropped from year to year?
Yeah, with all of the infrastructure items, and I probably failed you by not putting this on the record at the first budget hearing, right? Because while the trim, the millage is set, and that ship has sailed, that millage can never go high, at least for this fiscal year, can never go higher without a whole series of other radical steps taking place. The only place where you have capacity to raise revenue would be in the FP&L franchise fee. And all of those things are dedicated for infrastructure.
Right.
I don't know if there's an appetite for that, but that, when you ask me where that's an option, it's either take it from MLOP or raise it from the increased FP&L franchise.
And the third is any carryover
Yeah, that would be
dollars in
waiting
March.
until March, when we would have the ability to make an allocation from the carry forward.
Okay, so I guess I would motion to discuss sidewalk and tree repair.
Motion to discuss sidewalk and tree repair. I have a question to the manager.
I mean, other way around, sorry, tree repair, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I just listened to myself.
Um,
Sidewalk repair and tree trimming.
Manager, and this is to Director Badgewant, do we have enough in the budget to take care of all of our sidewalk tree repair needs for this fiscal cycle? If you anticipate there being a shortfall, what is that shortfall? I'm just trying to see if I can hone in on what everybody's trying to find, which is a number to make sure that when you get a call, you have something to address, you have the resources to address the call. Is that correct, Councilman Garcia?
Yeah, I think there's been a lot
Okay,
more
so
calls.
really what Councilman Garcia is trying to get to.
We're discussing both.
What Councilman Garcia is trying to get to is, an irate neighbor fell, and you ran out of budget. Do you anticipate running out of budget?
Essentially, we plan our year cycle to cover us and don't overexpend at the beginning, so in case there are issues that arise like this. So that has been the way we've managed it. Right now, we do anticipate a full cycle trimming of right-of-way. This is only right-of-way trimming in front of
I think
residential.
we're concentrating right now on sidewalks.
Then I will be silent on this matter.
Okay, no, well then, if you're prepared to discuss right-of-way, then we'll discuss right-of-way first. But I think with the example you used, or maybe I misheard it in debate, was we were looking at sidewalk repairs.
Well, sidewalk, yeah, and tree trim, but sidewalk repairs due to tree growth, but I guess the question I have,
It's gonna be
I don't know if Jeremy can answer the sidewalk question.
correct.
If I may interject, pardon me. The adopted budget for this current year for sidewalk replacement in our gas tax fund is $175,079. What we are budgeting for next fiscal year for 23-24 is $180, so it's $5,000 more than the current budget.
Okay, okay, good. And may I ask, as far as, okay, I can't know what's for sidewalk, Mr. Manager, is there a way we could, I know you guys prioritize dangerous sidewalks, but can we make an extra effort to try to do that this year, since our budget, yes, it's gone up 5,000, but costs have also gone up, so we're not getting as much bang for our buck. As far as doing, going, I know you do drive, you drive around the city, you see that, but are we prioritizing those, of course?
Our Public Works Director is on the Zoom, and he
Okay.
can chime in, and he can give you the entire process and the steps that they take as far as the methodology that they use to prioritize, and which areas, how they do it, and so forth. Omar, you're there?
Yes, good evening. Didn't want to just jump in without being called. My apologies, but good evening, Council and Mayor. I hope you're all doing well. So yeah, when it comes to the sidewalk repairs, we typically do this on cycles. So we have the town split into 9 zones, and so far we keep about 2 to 3 zones ahead from our inspection as far as what we're actually repairing. In the beginning of this, I'm just going to give you an overview. The beginning of the next fiscal year, we plan to begin with our Zone 1, which is the neighborhoods around the Royal Oaks Park. And then we will move our way east to Royal Oaks West and Royal Oaks East. And depending on budget availability, we would jump over to the east side of town, starting with the Loch Lomond, Loch Ness, and that downtown Main Street area, and just continue counterclockwise through the rest of the town. If there is a grave or high priority sidewalk trip hazard identified, we will first inspect it and try to patch it with either cold patch or grind it down, and work with our contractor to do a spot work order just to go to that area where high priority trip hazards have been identified, to do a small work order there, and then we'll jump back to the rest of our cycle. So I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Director Santos. Director Santos, I have a question. Do you believe that the funds that are allocated currently in your budget allow you to address the emergent needs and the ongoing cycle planned for this fiscal year?
At the moment, I would say yes. In addition, we have some other funds that we were able to allocate from micromobility, approximately 49,000. Correct me if I'm wrong, Melissa. So we have slightly more than we had the prior year. Obviously, as we go through our inspection cycles, we may identify more than we had anticipated, or less. In that case, we could do more neighborhoods than the previous year. So
I have a follow-up.
I feel comfortable with the amount of budget.
I appreciate it, thank you. As a follow-up, and I know that you said that you believe you have enough, but in the unforeseen circumstance that you may have encountered more work than you anticipated in your runs, do you have the opportunity or the ability to meet those needs through other funding sources?
Like the manager mentioned, during the carry forward, at that time is when, or about a month before that is when we would bring up that concern, and any FPL franchise fee funds that are available for us to use towards sidewalk, we will request, as we did this year that's about to end.
Got it, okay. Thank you. Any other of my colleagues want to go ahead and chime in? Go ahead.
Yep. So I wanted to chime in and kind of remind my colleagues when I went through this exercise of looking at what things we were looking at contemplating, cutting or moving or adjusting. Sidewalks wasn't one of the ones that was on my list to tackle. Now it's definitely something that we can seemingly never fund enough, but it is something that I would have more of an appetite to fund, either at the carry forward or, as the manager suggested, if we sit down and maybe take a new look at the franchise fee structure. Either of those two, but I don't think it's something. I think it's something that we're actually funding at a higher level than we were funding last year. So I'm comfortable with that going into the budget, and then if we can, improve our services after that, I'm happy to do so later into the budget cycle. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Any further discussion? Councilman Dieguez.
Thank you. And with respect to my colleague, I would hope that we're not going to touch the structure of the franchise fee restrictive ordinance. I think that's actually been a net positive in terms of making sure that we have a pot of money that's always going to go toward infrastructure when the conditions are right. But at least that would be, my view on that. But I did want Don to go ahead and please put up the images that I went ahead and submitted earlier today while we're discussing about things to keep in mind. And if you can just cycle through them. These are just images that I've taken over the months. As I go on my nightly walks around the community, I tend to pass by the parks and kind of see what's going on, both in the daytime and at night. So keep cycling through. There's about 6 or so images just to provide a sampling of six. Yeah. So to kind of, give you a sense, these are our pocket parks at various points on the east side of town and different things that need to be addressed, So you see a little bit of graffiti, older benches, and, just other utilities that need to be looked at, all right? Like, these to me are high priority, and we're not giving them the priority that they deserve. We always talk about the sidewalks, and those are important, but again, we gotta take a look at our pocket parks again. As I mentioned at the last council meeting, the Mini Parks Capital Improvement Program has not been funded since 2019, when we last had a deficit to deal with the delay in how we received the franchise fee revenue. And then again, the subsequent year, we had COVID and all the uncertainty about what our budget was going to look like in that time. So I think it's important that while we're having these discussions of beautification and all the other things that we can do, that we not forget about these parks. And as I mentioned before, I certainly, at the carry forward amendment, am going to be advocating for some kind of funding to restart that program, to make sure that we don't forget about these parks that exist on every corner of our streets, especially on the east side, but even on the west side, including the Section 1 area and even the West Lakes area as well. So I just want to make sure that we're keeping in mind where we also not forget about them, and that they are top of mind when we go to carry forward. Thank you, Don.
Thank you, Councilman Dieguez. I'm going to go ahead and assume that we've discussed this item enough. Is there a motion, or if we're going to just move on, we move on? Mr. Mayor, I know you're online. I wanted to recognize you as well. Do you have an opportunity? I don't know when you're signaling your hand or not, so I'm just, every now and then I'll check down with you.
No, I'm just waiting for there to be action. I think, I'm waiting for there to be a motion. Whenever there's motions, I'll jump in.
I will, knowing that our budget has gone up for sidewalks, I'd be willing to wait for the carryover, see how much carryover dollars we have. However, I still, I would ask my colleagues to keep in mind that yes, our pocket parks are always a priority, of course, and that has to be dealt with. But again, keep in mind during carry forward to look into the tree trimming budget, see if what we can do with that, knowing our limitations now. But thank you for your time. I won't be putting a motion at this time.
Thank you, Councilman Garcia. I'm going to continue from my right to the left. I'm going to go ahead. Councilman Fernandez, is there anything on the budget you want to recognize?
Excellent. So Councilman Garcia got two of my big items, the blasting advisory board and the police overtime out of the way. So thank you for taking the lead on that. Going through the list that I kind of worked back from, I think most of the rest of the recommendations, are acceptable at this time. The one change that I did want to make, there was a reduction to the mayor's travel and per diem budget of $3,000. I wanted to, rather than cutting that from the mayor's travel and per diem, I wanted to cut that from staff travel. And my rationale for that is I got to see, firsthand when we went to, and Councilman Dieguez was also there, when we went to Washington D.C. and the mayor was there and led the charge, going through working Capitol Hill, which ultimately bore fruit for the town in terms of contributing to a federal appropriation. So I think there's definitely value there. I wouldn't want to lose that. So that's my motion.
So the motion is to restore the mayor's travel per diem to 3,000, taking it away from the travel staff per diem.
Yep.
Is there a second?
I'll second for discussion.
Second for discussion. Discussion on this item? Go ahead, Councilman Garcia.
Sure. Mr. Manager, currently, could you just quickly, briefly go over staff travel budget and how it's used throughout the year? What you glean from that and what you gain from that?
Yeah, we already reduced, when we went through that exercise, when the millage was set at the lower number, we already went through and we reduced travel in the staff line by, sorry, my eyes are not what they used to be, $6,400 already. And that travel line is used for a slew of things. Number one is travel to some things that are required, like I know for sure Gina goes to the certain clerk things that she has obligated to go to maintain her certification. I know people in finance, Kay and so forth, they attend Government Finance Officers Association meetings. Tony and I have attended ICMA and Florida City and County Managers Association educational conferences and so forth, and that's primarily the items that travel is used for, is for educational and training purposes.
Thank you.
Not primarily, exclusively.
Yeah, travel.
No junkets to Hawaii.
Exactly. Travel for the staff is for immediate needs and to get best practices,
And also a small portion of that, similar to the mayor's travel, Tony and I have both accompanied the mayor when we've gone to Tallahassee or to any of those
absolutely
trips. Yeah.
So travel by the staff and also travel by the mayor is very important to bring back. It's brought back millions of dollars and part of the lobbying that he does representing the town. So. Yeah, I would hate to see anybody's budget, especially if it's used wisely and it pays for itself, 10 times when it comes to representing the town of Miami Lakes. So if there's a way perhaps to continue what's the total budget for the mayor's travel, 3,000?
Yeah, so it would be eliminating it entirely.
I would be against eliminating entirely since again, it's not like he's doing, when he does travel, it's pinpoint travel to make sure we're getting dollars and tax dollars and advocating for the town. I know it's a difficult time this year, but perhaps come to a middle ground and keep his budget at maybe 2,000. Allow him to be able to travel as well to represent the town, but also not cannibalize the staff. And perhaps take a look at some things that maybe you can do next year if it's not this year to perhaps. Move more money around without cannibalizing more from somewhere else. I'll ask my colleagues to see if they would support that.
Councilman Garcia, it sounds like you're suggesting to increase the mayor's travel budget to $2,000, taking it from MLOP.
No.
I'm trying to get to.
Trying to see if the manager, is there anywhere that they can suck up $2,000 prioritize
Yeah.
some things, moving into next year. I would hate to have a mayor of our town not be able to travel and represent the town, especially since it's been so successful over the last 7 years.
No, without a doubt. When we went through the exercise, me, Melissa, and Tony spent several hours sitting there, and every single item that we're suggesting to cut, it's a painful cut. And there's a legitimate purpose and a legitimate argument for not making the cuts that we suggested. But obviously, we have 2 and 2 is always going to be 4, and we had to get to a balanced budget.
Yeah.
But I believe that restoring the mayor's budget to $2,000 and taking it from staff travel budget, we could still accomplish, I believe, the lion's share of what we need to accomplish.
Well, first, I would ask my other colleagues to opine, and also the, Mr. Fernandez, Councilman Fernandez, is that something that you'd be willing to work with at
Yeah,
2,000?
I'm willing to go to 2,000.
I make an amendment then to make it 2,000.
There's an motion to the original, there's an amendment to the original motion to amend the mayor's budget to $2,000, removing it
Second.
from staff travel. There's a second. All those in favor of the amendment, the
No,
amendment
I
alone?
have discussion.
Okay, discussion.
Thank you. And I appreciate the sentiment where that comes from, but I can't support it. At the end of the day, we also had our travel budget cut that we would use for things like the IEMO, the Institute for Elected Municipal Officials, a program that I think you, especially as a newer member to the council, would benefit from. It was actually one of the best pieces of advice that the mayor gave myself and to the councilwoman as well. We had the opportunity to attend around the same time. It's a really great program put on by the Florida League of Cities, and we've had our travel budget cut, and we don't even get a salary, right? We get the stipend and the car allowance, but again, I think that, it's a tough budget year, right? And I don't think that by leaving this item, untouched at the current rate, which is 0, I think, again, we're all going to have to make difficult choices and just come out of pocket. Myself and Councilman Fernandez had to do that last year as well. So I just can't support this item as is right now. It's not again, I just think we need to keep things where they're at. I appreciate the managers accommodating, but if that's the case, then I want to see the council's travel budget restored as well for the advocacy that we do as well. So unless we're going to get all, I'm just not inclined to support just one over the other.
Thank you, Councilman Dieguez. Mayor, do you have any opinion on this matter?
I'm not sure if I can opine on it, so I'd rather not even vote on it unless the attorney tells me it's a conflict or it's an issue. I don't know if it is or isn't.
Mr. Mayor, this is an item discussing a budgetary line item that's always been there. It's to fulfill your needs as a mayor. It's not to benefit you in any personal way, and it's for you to be able to advance policies for the town. I mean, that's what that line item is for. It's also for the council to do the same thing, and they all will vote on that item, whether it's restored or not. And so I don't think that is that you have a conflict per se in opining on this.
Got it. There's only 2 trips that I take. Is the one I take up with the manager and the deputy manager. Then I go up possibly to DC, but I don't know if we're going to do that this year. Depends. I talked to Congressman Diaz-Balart on that, so I'm okay with even moving it down to $1,000 or $700. Just to go to my Tallahassee trip with the manager. This year, I think there was money left over anyway, so it doesn't really matter. Look, the reality is the proof is in the pudding. The successes of the last years in legislative priorities has worked. So it's up to the council. I get it. I know you guys have been always accommodating, but I would even be okay with $1,000 for that trip that I take to back and forth. I don't stay overnight. Whatever's left over gets pushed on in the carry forward, which I think there was money left over this year, over $1,000 left over this year. So at the end of the day, there's no junkets, nothing like that, no frills. Even times that I've gone to, I remember a couple years back where I had to go to DC for another trip. I ended up staying to save money at $100 Airbnb. So I'm always very frugal when it comes to that, but it is part of the job to do it, but it's up to you all. But I'll be fine with even 1,000. I'll just go to the one day, just that one up and down to Tallahassee. I don't think I'll be going to DC this year unless the congressman tells me otherwise that our zip code is moving forward.
Thank you, Mayor, for your remarks. Councilwoman Morano.
Thank you, Councilmember. I would suggest that we leave the budget as is, and if something comes up, as we do many times, we can discuss it as a body and allocate funds at that moment, or transfer funds from staff travel to the mayor's travel line item if necessary. If something does come up, I anticipate that the mayor's going to have a busy year this coming year, so I don't know how much travel he'll be able to do. But if something comes up and it's a worthy trip, then we can reallocate at that moment.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to give you some of my remarks. I have no problem funding the mayor's travel, and I kind of agree with the Councilwoman Rano. You know, we have an opportunity every month during the mayor's report. If he needs to submit a travel item, whether it be for $1,000, $2,000, $3,000, I've never seen him be, like he said, you know, frivolous with our money. But he does have issues which he needs to represent the town. So I kind of sit with that sentiment. Let's go ahead and fund it when he needs it. And if we have that piggy bank there in the staff line item, I think we're good with it. So I think without necessarily having to amend the item, the only thing that would come back is just have him say, hey, look, I need to travel. Put it on the report that he does every month to the manager, to us during the regular council meeting. I don't think that's too much pre-planning, you know, unless he needs to go by the seat of his pants, so to speak. And I know sometimes things in Tallahassee happen from one day to the next, but I'm comfortable with that as well.
Yeah, and any transfers here would probably be all within the general fund, so it's a one-time read. It's not an ordinance because it's not coming from a different fund. It's all within the general fund, so a resolution will do it. It'll be easy to knock out. You'll only have to address it one time.
Yeah, so I mean, it seems like we're all in agreement that he needs a travel budget. It's just how do we get there, right? So the motion is right now to reduce the travel for staff to include the mayor, but I also heard in discussion that maybe there's another way of getting there. So we can either go ahead and call the question or withdraw it, and kind of through discussion, we got to the same point.
I think it belongs to the body at this point. I don't think I can withdraw it, but if somebody wants to amend it.
So I'll go ahead and make the amendment that, to go ahead and allocate the $2,000 as suggested by the motion, but by way of report, that the mayor submits a report on his travel, and when we go ahead and vote on that during our regular council meeting.
So there's no amendments to this budget as it's stated?
The way that you framed it, you said that you can already take it out of the staff travel.
Yes. So we're not amending at this time? It would just be as needed as the year
As
goes?
needed,
Okay.
it comes back and report. So my amendment is to move that the mayor just submit a report, and we'll go ahead and approve his travel as the reports come in.
I'll second.
There's a motion, there's a second. Any discussion on the item? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Back to the original motion as amended. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Councilman Fernandez, back to you.
Yes. So my second big item, which I got a little bit of a curveball right at the beginning of the meeting, so I wanted to have the manager kind of walk me through it and for the benefit of my colleagues. So when I had my budget meeting walkthrough with the manager and Melissa and Tony, one of the things that came up that was discussed was the rate at which we are budgeting and collecting revenues, right? So that the infamous 95% collection amount. And so the manager brought me a piece of paper that shows that we did increase the amount that we're budgeting for delinquent taxes on this year's budget from 50 to 100. But I wanted to figure out percentage-wise what that equates to, and I want to see if we're at. So one of the things that we did during that exercise, we went through historicals, and our actual the actual number that we collect over, averaged over the last 10 years is actually closer to 95.5%. Right? So it was my original intent today to ask to move it to 95.5%. But given this, I want to go through those numbers and work backwards and figure out if we're at 95.5 or if there's still room for adjusting.
Yeah, this was the spreadsheet that finance put together, and it showed the collections from 2013 through 2022, because they're actuals, we haven't finished this current year yet, and it ranged from 94.41 to as high as 96.93, and I think that's where you totaled those up and did an average of those, and we were somewhere in that 94.4 or 95.4, 95.5, somewhere in there, and that's where we had discussed the collection rate. But in our current budget, we have a separate, what we budget at 95% is the current year's collections. We have a separate line item for delinquent taxes. So delinquent taxes, every year for the last 4 fiscal years, we've been budgeting at $50,000. But during the exercise of looking for more revenues and looking for expenses when the millage cap was set, one of the exercises that administratively we did, and it was in your recommendations since the workshop, was to move that delinquent tax revenue line from 50,000 to 150,000, and we didn't just do that just to cover a hole. We did that looking at historical, looking at trends, and that 150 was more in line with actual delinquent tax receipts. So that total of what this year is proposed of $9,043,000, that, do you have a percentage of what that equates to?
96.6.
96.6. So that's where we're at there. Yeah.
All right, so I will let that one go.
You're on to your last one.
I'm gonna hold on to my last one.
Being collegial as we're being today, I'm going to go ahead and turn over the floor to Councilwoman Rano. You get a
Thank you.
former
Now-
friend a little bit later.
Now the anticipation now gets under my skin. Now, I have a couple of questions before I think that most of the things that I wanted to discuss, with the exception of, I wanted to increase tree trimming and sidewalks, but we'll leave that for carry forward, and I understand that. I have a couple of questions. As I was going through the salaries in all of the different departments, the increases in the salaries, I know that there's a COLA increase that is part of this budget, but the increases in the different departments, they all come out to different percentages. It's not that 2.5% increase for the salaries. So can you walk me through how we get to that number?
The percentage that we're proposing is the same one across the board. Now, it depends what you're looking at, because obviously we've had staff changes throughout this current fiscal year. So what was adopted in our budget last year, it's based on specific people, right? So it's John Doe, Mary Smith,
Okay.
and if during the year Mary Smith left our employee and we hired somebody to replace Mary Smith, and the replacement for Mary Smith makes a little less, a
Right.
little more, then
okay, and I.
that's probably where the discrepancies, if there are any. But I could tell you that based on the snapshot that we take today, September of 2023, the employees that we have currently on our staff, everybody's getting the same across the board COLA that we're proposing of 2.5%.
Okay, so can you walk me through, just so that I understand, walk me through for example, town administration. Let's just use that one because that's the one that I'm looking at. Walk me through the increase in that one so that I can get to the 2.5 COLA. I'm sorry, Melissa, I hate to make you do math on the spot. Page 84, I'm sorry. I promised to get new glasses before the next budget cycle.
I'm not completely sure what it is that you're asking.
Okay, so for example, year-end projection is at $1,283,977,
Give me 1 second.
right?
Let me get there, hold on.
Which line item are you?
I am looking at salaries, regular salaries in town administration.
Okay, I'm there. Go ahead.
Okay, so year-end projections are at 1283977. I'm sorry. Yes.
Yeah.
1283, yes. I'm looking at my phone and at the paper. And the proposed budget is 1364793.
So I'm assuming that your question is, why is the year-end projection less than what we budgeted? And if that's the case, we did have...
Well, no, I assume that that's the increase, right? There should be an increase from our year-end projection to what we're budgeting this year, because there's a COLA that we're adding to everyone's salary, correct?
But year-end projection is actuals, right? So if we had a position that was vacant for a month or two while we were recruiting for a replacement or what have you, that's what,
So can you walk
for
me just
example,
through this one?
Christina Labossiere, she was part of administration. She left, and we had that position vacant for a couple of months. We also had some part-time interns that we also had vacant for a couple months. So I don't think you can necessarily do the 2.5 based on the year-end projection, because it's as the manager stated. There are people who leave. Someone else may come in. They may come in at a higher salary. They may come in at a lower salary. So what we have as the proposed budget is the current staff that we have without, yeah.
Right, because I tried to do the math in different departments, and it was all. Is there any department where there wasn't any change?
I know Parks had a bunch of changes. They had staff move from one facility, then back to that facility. So, I mean, as far as a department that didn't have changes, Transit didn't have changes. I think Communications may have not had any changes in one of their sections. Hold on.
Okay, so that answers my question, and I appreciate that, because I went crazy trying to do the math and it wasn't working out for me. Another thing that I wanted to point out is the increases in our contracts for janitorial at the parks. Some of them went up, but some of them did not. Do we have different companies?
So they're the same. I believe the only one that you're referring to that did not is MLOP, because we had budgeted more emergency, I guess, cleanup, because the thought was that that facility itself would be rented out more. So that
And it's not.
So that was the logic behind it.
Okay, so
compared to
that's
the
why that
prior
one
year.
went down. But overall, and ground maintenance as well, the budgets went up. I know that you're going to work, after we survive budget season, you're going to work on bringing us the numbers of what this would look like if we could do some of these things in-house. Okay. Let me see what else I have. That's one, that's it. I'm gonna leave it at that, because a lot of the things that I wanted to address have already been addressed. One quick question that I had. There's an item, line item on the mayor and council expenses, and it's called meeting setups. I don't know what that is. Setup costs for meetings, $300. I was just wondering what that was. If it's food, I'm not getting any, so I want to know where my food is.
I think that's the proclamations and stuff, no?
no.
Yeah, the proclamations were on a separate line item. And also, did we reinstate the data plans for the devices? Because I also saw those on there, and I thought that we had done away with those a while back.
No. I think we had diminished them based on who wasn't using them at the time.
So the meeting setup is nameplates, the cleaning of tablecloths.
So it's like
Trophy
dry
land,
cleaning?
Trophy land. Those are the expenses that have come out of that account.
Okay, thank you. And the data plans are still on some, I thought we had said that we were going to get rid of those because we had Wi-Fi everywhere in the town, so it was kind of unnecessary to, so I remember during the franchise fee budget, I remember that we did away with them. I just don't know if they're necessary or,
Yeah.
I only looked at them here in the mayor and council section. I don't know if other staff members also have data plans, but any facility that you're working out of has Wi-Fi. So it might be something that we can consider removing, because it doesn't make any sense that you'd be working out of this building with a data plan.
Yeah, Herman is not here tonight. so he could explain that better. It's a small item, it's just over $3,000.
Right, I just, my
Yeah.
question was, it's over $3,000 in the mayor and council budget?
I don't believe
But
anybody,
does any other staff members have it?
I don't,
I feel, I'm sorry, field staff do, like, I believe our code compliance officers may have,
Right, but
our
that's different
stormwater-
because
yeah.
they're
But
mobile.
other than that, no other staff, I believe,
No,
has
so I
that.
don't know, I don't use it, I don't know if anyone else uses it, but that might be something that we can consider. Right, the data. Mhm.
Yeah. I do tend to use my iPad because I keep my emails, my council-related items separate. So whenever I message Gina, my new business items, or Victoria, it always comes from my iPad because for the Sunshine Law, I want to have a clear delineation between my personal, devices and the town devices, especially with me being an attorney with confidential information. So I, for myself at least, always keep the two separate.
Okay, well, I'm not using mine, so I don't know if anybody else isn't using theirs, I'd be happy to.
I've been using
remove
mine. I use mine a lot. Just, I guess the question would be using,
But you use it where there's no Wi-Fi, or you use it, because if you use it at home or at one of our
yeah, I can
facilities,
use the Wi-Fi.
there's Wi-Fi.
Is there any concern when it comes to security? It's a town Wi-Fi, I mean, town laptop has passwords for the town Outlook and stuff like that. Any concern using public Wi-Fi if we're going to use that laptop? No? Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, Herman is not here. Well, it's not a large ticket item, it was just something that I wanted to discuss. If Herman is not here, then I guess,
yeah, what we could do, council member, is we can have Herman work with each and every one of you, and then if there's any of you that don't use, or if you have something that's not working properly, everything should be working
Yeah, boot
properly.
it out.
So if you have something, but if there's something, I'll ask him to work with each and one of you, and then maybe that'll be a savings to the budget, not necessarily to approve or disapprove here, but we
right,
can.
but moving forward, we
Yeah,
might just be
I'll
able
have
to.
him work with each and every one of you, and he'll, see what it is you need, what you want, and then we'll work it out there, and there may be some savings that we can work out.
Thank you, thank you. Other than that, on my list, I had tree trimming, sidewalks, the police overtime, the committees. I think that was it. Thank you.
Ooh, are you reserving your last one as well?
I don't have a last one to reserve, but I might come up with one, so
Okay, so
don't
we're
count me
gonna-
out just yet.
We're gonna have a placeholder. You and Councilman Fernandez have a placeholder for your last one. Councilman Dieguez, and then to the mayor.
Yeah, I don't have anything further to add. My big concern was the police. No, mine, I'm not reserving, Your Honor. But my one item was on the police overtime related to the vehicle burglary unit, and so we already covered that, so I don't have anything more to add, but I just, just a commentary, similar to what Councilman Garcia was stating earlier. I want to congratulate the staff for, putting up with us on a particularly, brutal budget year, and especially Melissa, who has been very patient. So congratulations, you survived another, well, you're almost done. Let's wait to see what the reserve items are. But, congratulations, you survived another budget year. So well done, staff.
Thank you, Councilman Dieguez. On to the mayor.
Thank you, Councilman Collazo. And for the second year in a row, I'll be voting no on the budget, and I'll walk you guys through what my thought process was. About three or four budget cycles before, I warned about increasing recurring costs to the town, and a constant increase in growth for local government without an increase in services. One thing I've seen, even this year, right, we keep talking about a tough budget year, but compared to last year's adopted budget, you still have, it's over $1 million over last year's budget, right? Then the previous year, you're talking about in 2021, it was at 17 million, 2022, 18, 2023, 19, 2024, 20, and so forth and so on. Yet, my biggest priority, which has always been adding officers to our police force, has consistently fell on deaf ears. And again, I respect everybody's opinion, perspective, vote on this issue, but I'll be voting no for the second year in a row. 3 years ago, I voted no in first reading. I was a team player. We worked through the budget process. I voted yes in the second round. Last year, I was a hard line in the sand on this issue, and this year again, it's a hard line in the sand on this issue. When I first started on this, our budgets always fluctuated between 15 to 16 million for many years. And we were able to do magic, but it almost feels like just government gets hungrier and hungrier and hungrier. And I don't see that level of service, specifically in public safety, continue to go up. So I'll be voting no on this budget. And my line in the sand is just seeing the budget go up every year, continuously, our operating budget, and not having extra officers on our midnights, afternoon shift. And that's something that's important to me. Again, it's not something I've talked about now. It's almost 3-4 budget cycles in a row that I brought it up. I pushed to change our strategic planning process to that point. I've really kept harping on this, but I'm a hard no on this budget. But thank you, and again, I respect my colleagues' perspectives and vote on this and an opinion to that effect.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Mayor. I do want to have, I'm not bringing any items forward. I think my colleagues did a good job in attending all the meetings. We did a great job listening to each other, understanding also what staff was telling us on what's doable, what's not doable. I really weighed a lot on what the lieutenant said, and really what all the staff said, and I really commend not just the collegiality, but really the time that we've taken to listen to each other. I don't think anything's fallen on deaf ears. I think we take this very, very seriously, and everybody here has done an outstanding job. I know it's been frustrating, Melissa. I'm a pretty good judge of reading people, and I can sometimes read your frustration, even though you have a smile on your face. But I want to thank you because you have a lot of patience. And I know sometimes you reach that tipping point, but you've never gone over, and we couldn't do this without you. Your grasp and your understanding of the budget, the fact that you have an answer literally within a few keystrokes away, gives us immense amount of confidence. And we appreciate the work that you put in, and it doesn't go unnoticed. So I just wanted to thank you for a job well done. I have nothing further to add. I think our debate has been strong. I think we've all listened to each other, and I'm ready to call the question.
If I may, before you vote, just to share what the actual MLOP transfer will be. The MLOP transfer will be $499,322, and the reserve requirement is $169,286.
Can you give us the final, so then what's the totality, just to make sure that we put it in the proper posture?
The total general fund budget will be $20,373,623, and then the total MLOP budget will now be $1.3 million.
How much of a difference is that from where we started?
From where we started? Hold on. Without taking from MLOP, it would have been 1.8.
No, I get that, but where does it sit now compared to that 1.3?
Before the transfers in and transfers out. Maybe your year-end projection?
$30,000. Yeah.
Excellent. And then the last thing, during our briefing, we also discussed the role of the town planner, who also oversees transportation. Did staff have an opportunity to work with Susana and figure out how much of her role involves overseeing transportation and potentially allocating a portion of her salary to PTP funds?
Yeah, we took a look at it, and internally we looked at, she has greater duties now because but that doesn't mean that she's not doing any of the stuff that she was doing before. Her primary role is as the town planner. In fact, her job description hasn't really changed. In the conversation and consideration of that, we said, we got to change that because now she has oversight over the transportation function, which is primarily done by Olivia. So it would be minimal. I think 5%, 10%, something to that. It'd just be the supervisory role that she would play. But primarily, she's still doing 95% the same role she was doing before, which is the town planner.
Right, so that's something, I mean, I'm not going to include it in the budget as it stands now, but it's something I would like for you guys to bring back later on.
Okay, as a consideration from PTP.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Verano, I think we're getting ready to vote if you want to join us.
Yes, Madam Clerk, if you can call the roll.
So motion to approve the ordinance in second reading, item 7B, council, as amended. Councilmember Collazo.
Yes.
Councilmember Fernandez.
Yes.
Councilmember Diegues.
Yes.
Councilmember Garcia.
Yes.
Councilmember Ruano.
Yes.
Mayor Sid.
No.
The ordinance in second reading passes.
Thank you. On to item 8A, which is a resolution amending the Loch Lomond Neighborhood Service District. Before I turn over the floor to Councilman Diegues, I do want to give the opportunity for the residents that are here from Loch Lomond. So I wanted the motion to reopen public comments.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you.
Yeah, there at the bottom, and then name and address.
Yep. Patrick Kunkel, 15860 West Prestwick Place. I do want to thank you for looking into this situation. I know it's been tedious and it's been very helpful, knowing that in the future we're going to get things squared away with our guard system. So I'm present along with our security chairperson, and again, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Kunkel. Thank you, Mr. O'Toole, for being here. Any other public comments? Hearing none, public comments is closed. Councilman Diegues, your item.
Thank you. And these two resolutions just have to do with what we discussed previously, which is to switch over the duties of the guardhouse and the roving guard over from Kent Security over to SFM. After talking about it with the residents, we decided on a two-pronged approach, which was to have an immediate switch over to SFM, but simultaneously to have the town attorney work with the residents on getting a new RFP process out there with a stronger contract that they find acceptable. So that was what the majority of the residents at the last couple meetings I've had with them have stated. They do unanimously, though, I even waited about a week or so after the first budget hearing to ask them again and meet with them whether they wanted to wait or switch immediately, and the overwhelming amount of the residents said they want to switch over now. So with that, the first resolution that I'm gonna be moving is to terminate the existing contract there under as provided in the contract for convenience, within providing 30 days notice. So in 30 days they'll be out of there, and then I'll move on to the next.
I'll second the item.
Yeah.
Motion and a second. Any discussion on the termination?
Yes.
Yes, Mayor, go ahead.
So I'm okay with the termination. The only part I'm not okay is with assigning another company without a proper RFP notice. That was one thing that just didn't sit well with me towards the end of the last meeting. I voted for it. We all voted for it. But when I left the council chambers, the more I thought about it, I was like, man, these types of issues need a proper vetting. Who knows? This is 2023. There could be other incredible companies out there. Again, SFM has done a great job at Royal Oaks, but being competitive, and I'm a big believer in that, it brings out the best in all companies. So I'm okay with eliminating, giving 30-day notice. We can do all that. The only part I won't be supporting is assigning anyone until I rather us go through a process as soon as possible. It shouldn't be that difficult, and to coincide that. I just did not personally did not feel comfortable assigning.
May I
any-
clarify for the mayor? I don't know that he understood my
Thank
earlier
you
remarks.
for your comments, Mr. Mayor. Back to Councilman Dieguez.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, just to clarify, because I don't know if you heard, but on the next motion, where we're going to talk about the change order, there is going to be instruction for them to also move immediately to an RFP. The change order does provide that they can terminate for convenience, very similar to the Kent contract, at any time upon 30 days' notice. So the idea would be that we terminate with Kent tonight. In 30 days, ideally, when the next motion comes around, we would approve SFM to take over the guardhouse operations. But even though the contract would be for 2 years, we would terminate, like, in the meantime, Lorenzo would work with the residents, including Marisol Basuto, on a different contract and a new RFP that would then go out within that time period. And then when we're ready to move on that RFP, then we will once again terminate the change order contract, if you will, for convenience, and then do the RFP. So the RFP piece is going to be included in the next motion, but I just wanted to clarify that there will be an RFP coming. But on this item, this is just to terminate Kent.
I understand it. Just wanted to put those comments on the record. I'm in favor of this motion. The next motion, I'll bring it up, but yeah, I'm still concerned in regards. You hit on the head, the 2-year contract going through the RFP month. I don't know. I'm a big believer in being competitive in especially in the public sector when we're dealing with people's dollars, but I understand it. I'm a yes on this one. I'll be a no on the next one.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Mayor. I do have some comments that I wanted to ask the attorney. The strategy outlined removing somebody that we had an identified issue with. Is there any issue with that right now?
With removing Kent?
Correct.
No, there's no issue.
Okay, so if we remove Kent, they need to be replaced with somebody. By replacing them with SFM, does that create some type of legal hardship for us?
The Kent contract and the SFM contract both contain clauses that allow the town to terminate the contract for any reason deemed necessary, as long as we provide 30 days. So we can provide them 30 days. Yes, we should have someone already as a backup, because you can't have them without security services. But you can do that, have them in the change work order. That's not the item that we're talking about right now, but you could do that in the next item if you so decide, and then work on a long-term solution with that RFP process. Does that answer the question?
Kind of. It's always a lawyerly kind of response, which kind of weaves in and out of the...
I am a lawyer.
But going back, I think the mayor raises a valid point, right? We always want these things RFP'd. Was the SFM contract that we're piggybacking, was this something that was bidded on? Was it something, were they the only responding person?
I understand the question. Yes, the SFM bid was something that was publicly noticed, and that's the reason we can piggyback on it. It did go through an RFP process. I believe at the time, and don't quote me, there were about 6 or 7 different companies that bid on the project, and ultimately SFM was the one that was chosen. This was true for both Royal Oaks and later on by Section 1.
Okay, so I have no issues supporting kind of the path that you both lawyers have kind of outlined, as long as it doesn't put us in harm's way and it's a properly procured, and then realizing that again in the future. Well, is there any issue with that? Now, going back to reprocure this, is there any issue with that?
No, there's no
So
issue.
going into a limited contract with SFM, reprocuring, I guess we get out of it with convenience, through convenience as well? Okay. All right, all my questions have been answered. Thank you. Any further discussion on the item? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Madam Clerk, I believe the mayor, did you say yes, Mayor?
Yes, aye.
Thank you. On to the next item, 8B.
Thank you. And this is the item putting in the replacement company on a temporary basis, on a temporary basis. It's the change order piece. And also as part of my motion, not only approving the switch over to SFM, I also want to give direction to the town attorney to work with the residents on a mutually acceptable contract and RFP that can go out to bid as soon as practically practicable, let me go with that language, to go ahead and competitively bid, which again will resolve the mayor's concern about whether or not there was a competitive process. This is just meant to hold things in place in the meantime. And again, this is, I just want to emphasize what the residents overwhelmingly have indicated that they want to see done. And one final point is that even though there's an increase overall in the contract, it would not affect the savings that they're going to realize this year when we approve the reduced rate. So I just want to be clear about that. With that, that is my motion.
I'll second the item for discussion. Hearing no discussion. Oh, okay, go ahead, Councilman Fernandez.
I have discussion. So yes, I will be supporting this. I do want to take the opportunity to thank Councilman Dieguez for your leadership on this item. I think it speaks volumes, but I think that there's also a slight cautionary tale to all of us here on the dais as we continue to have conversations about how to govern the NSDs. Let's not forget this process. Let's not forget how there was an urgent need. This council acted upon that need in a way that a process, a more cumbersome process involving a general election of the NSD members and things of that nature would not have allowed us to do. So I just want to put that on the record, that as we progress into conversations on how to do a better job of governing around our NSDs, we don't lose track that there are situations such as this where immediate action is necessary and taken, and that needs to be taken, and we need to establish protocols to be able to do those things without tying our hands. So I just wanted to put that on the record.
In a brief rebuttal, all I will say is that there is a difference between the scope of something, right, and something that's already authorized, which this is authorized. With that said, I am working to allay your concerns from the last meeting on a faster process to get resident input that comes from the condominium world. So, and I'm still fleshing it out, but I hope to present that soon. And so I just wanted to let you know that I'm trying to work on that, trying to find the happy medium between an extraordinarily cumbersome process and one that still incorporates the resident input that we need to receive for these types of districts. But thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion on this item? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
I am opposed.
Thank you, Mayor. There are no further items on our meeting. I think the last item was deferred. Anybody else? No? Hearing none, meeting's adjourned. Thank you.
You guys all surprised me.